Hey up, it's Steve from the Old Yorkshire Geek, and it's time to review Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 6. Only 4 left to go after this. 7, 8, 9, 10, yeah. Season 2, Episode 6, Lost in Translation. Nothing to do with Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson. It's an Uhura episode, and it's really good. I really enjoyed it. I didn't think I was going to, but I did. There's quite a lot packed into this episode in the informational sense. We learn a lot of things. And it's an interesting episode. It could be said, it is a good Star Trek episode because it's about finding new life, not necessarily new civilizations, but new life. It's not exactly original. Similar things have been done before in Star Trek. But anyway, let's have a look at this episode. Let's get it up. There we go. Right, so obviously, oh crikey. I'm going to have to mute this, aren't I? I forgot to mute it. Oh, it is muted. There we go. Right, so there we go. We begin with the Star Trek Cinematic Universe. Here it is, look. Got to. Right, so begin. We get a recap. Which surprised me, actually, this one. We recapped about Hemmer's death. I'm thinking, why are they recapping about Hemmer's death? Because Hemmer's in this episode quite a lot. So we learn about, Hemmer sacrificed himself to save the crew when he got infected with Borg spores or whatever. I don't know. However they infected, the Borg growing, not Borg, not Borg, Gorn spores. When they get inside, and the young grow inside a host, don't they? We learn about Spock, and we're reminded about Spock and Chapel, their blossoming relationship after his breakup with T'Pring. Not a breakup, but they're spending time apart. So I presume this is when she goes off with Ston, and now Spock is going off with Chapel. I will reiterate, I'm still convinced this is a new timeline. It's nothing to do with what happened in the original series or anything from that side of Star Trek. So they're basically making it up as they go along, more or less. Some other things are mentioned in this episode. They kind of reinforce that for me a little bit, but we'll get to that. This is where we learn about when La'an and Kirk went back to Toronto in 2022, and history was altered. The timeline changed when we learned that Khan was actually a small child in 2022 and not floating off somewhere in the Botany Bay in deep space. So it's a new timeline. I think you're going to do something. There we go. Right, so off we go. Right, they're at a nebula. I can't remember what it's called. I think it might be Bannon's Nebula, which is a coincidence. We were talking about a chap called Bannon. Maybe it's deliberate, I don't know. Last night in my live stream, my live news stream, we were talking about Melissa Navia, who plays Lieutenant Ortegas in this. Her husband, called Brian Bannon, and he passed away in 2021. It's very sad, from leukemia. So I'm wondering, did they name this nebula after him? I think it's called Bannon's Nebula. I'm sure that's what they said. So there we go. So we see the Enterprise appear from the nebula. It's all very nice effects. Although it makes the nebula look a little bit small, because they say it's a stellar nursery, so where stars are being formed. It all seems a bit compressed. Here we see they're at a deuterium collection station. You see it emerging there from the cloud, the nebula. Obviously, nebulas generally, in real life, nebulas really aren't this, dense. It's really dispersed gas. Probably if you're inside the nebula, you might not even be able to see it. You can only see them generally from a long way away, as a rule. But anyway. Because our sun is technically, we're still kind of inside a nebula, sort of. It is detectable, but you can't see it because it's that dispersed. But anyway. Right, so the Enterprise have been sent to check out this deuterium collection station that's collecting deuterium, which is a heavy form of hydrogen. which is used in the warp engines. They use deuterium and anti-deuterium to create the warp reaction in the engines. So this is what the station's for, and it's suffering problems. It's been malfunctioning. They don't know why. So the Enterprise has been sent to sort this out. And not only the Enterprise, we learn that there's another ship in the area. Is that it, or is that part of the station? I don't know. But later on, we learn that the Farragut's also here. But as you may notice there, Christopher Pike, he's been promoted. He says it's temporary, but he's got a promotion to Fleet Captain. Remember when we met him first in the original series in the Menagerie, he was called Fleet Captain Pike. So maybe it's not so temporary after all. And apparently this just means he's officially a captain of more than one place. He's the captain of the Enterprise, and he's also been put in command of this deuterium collection station. I think it's got a proper name, but I can't remember what it is. So he commands two things now: a station and a starship, which is why he's a fleet captain. I don't think it had ever been explained exactly what a fleet captain was before in Star Trek. I mean, I just guessed it were like beneath a Commodore, like between Captain and Commodore, and then Commodore went to Admiral, didn't it? And they kind of got rid of all that in the Next Generation and beyond, the Berman era of Star Trek. They kind of got rid of all that, and you went straight from Captain to Admiral. They had the various ranks of Admiral instead, until they made Geordie LaForge a Commodore. That put a spanner in the works, didn't it? Anyway, never mind. Right, so here we learn about Uhura. She's really tired. She hasn't been sleeping well. Apparently she's been essentially up for 10 days because she's kind of been not put in charge, but had a major part in sorting out this problem with the station. I don't know why, to be honest, because she's the comms officer, isn't she? Maybe she's been up communicating with the station. I don't know, but she's really tired, and she starts hearing through communication. They got a thing in her ear, a weird noise, which I thought at first was going to be something to do with the Gorn. Hence the Hemmer bit at the beginning. The Hemmer recap. I thought it was going to be something to do with the Gorn, because we're told that we're quite near to Gorn space, and they talk about Gorn expansion and stuff like that. But anyway, number one comes in and congratulates. There we see his badge. He's got a new badge because he's a fleet captain now. Congratulates him for that. There's a better look at it. But he says it's only temporary. I wonder if it is. I don't know. Will he remain fleet captain for the rest of the season? I don't know. Or will he be back to just being regular captain next week? I don't know. There's Spock. So here we go. Is this the bit? It's suggested that they refuel their own deuterium tanks using the Bussard collectors. So this is what happens here. There we go. We see the Bussard collectors fire up there, and they start bringing in deuterium into the nacelles, which obviously will go into the deuterium storage tanks, which I presume are somewhere in the secondary hull. And I think this is where she hears this weird thing in her ears. There's Uhura, but she can't explain. She says, "I'm getting a transmission," but then there's no recording of it. She doesn't understand, and it disappears. She can't hear it again. So anyway, then we cut to another scene where she's watching herself and Hemmer. Hemmer was giving her instructions in how to recalibrate the communications grid, and the antennas in particular, that the communications antennas that run through the nacelles, apparently. And when he was chief engineer, she got on his nerves, always asking for the antennas to be recalibrated. And so he said, "I might as well just show you how to do it, yourself, when you're not pestering me with it." So this is a video of Hemmer showing Uhura how to do this recalibration, and showing that they're good friends and they're having a joke with each other and all that. So there's that. Oh, and then let's see if it gets to it, see if it shows her. Pellier, Commander Pellier comes in, the new chief engineer. There she is. Asks what she's doing. There we see they're inside the nacelles. That's actually a nice thing. We see the curtain, that it's a cylindrical nacelle, and there we see the back end of the nacelle, which they've got the dots on, hasn't it? So that's the back end of the nacelle. So they must be near the forward section, perchance, maybe, or maybe up top of the pylon. I don't know. Anyway, she's asking what she's doing. So she explains to her, and then Pellier asks, why have you never spoken to me before? And Uhura says, I'm sure I have. And says, no, you haven't. And she suggests that it's because she's replaced Hemmer, and Hemmer and Uhura were friends. And anyway, so they introduce each other, and it's slightly awkward, but it's fine. Right, what happens next? As I said, it's slightly awkward. So she finishes off there. There we go. We see Hemmer again. It's nice to see him back. Nice to see him back. There he's joking with her. He says, "Wait, don't do that," and then it's a joke. It's fine. Right, then we cut to this really brightly lit corridor. I don't like these corridor sets on this Enterprise. They're too brightly lit. I know they're brightly lit in the original series, but I don't know. It's too much like an Apple store. Too Kelvin timeline. But we'll get to that as well later. This is Una and Pike. Pike's putting Una in charge of repairing the station. There's a crew already on the station, and I think, they are the crew of the station. I think they are anyway. Or maybe they are. I don't know if the station was automated or if it had a crew on already, and the crew that we see there are from the Enterprise. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I'm not entirely sure. No, they must have been there all... Oh, I don't know, though. We'll see. Right, Uhura goes into the turbo lift, and she has a bit of a fright. She just gets in, and then she turns round. She hears the noise again in her ear. This weird noise. And is it going to show us? There we go. She turns round, and she sees Hemmer all zombie-like, and she just screams. There he is, look, very scary. And she screams, and then we cut to the... opening titles, so we'll go through these. Directed by Dan Liu. I don't probably pronouncing that Liu this week. Right, so she goes to sick bay, does Uhura, and the Dr. Mabenga checks her out and says she's basically fine, but she's got a mild case of deuterium poisoning, which apparently can cause hallucinations and sleeplessness and blurred vision, stuff like that, lightheadedness. So the chalking what's happened to her as due to deuterium poisoning, which must be quite common because later on another character says that he's had it as well. So there we go. So Dr. Mabenga says he also takes some other readings and says, "You're not sleeping well, are you?" She says, "Well, no, not really." So he tells her, "Go and get some sleep." He basically takes her off duty until she gets a good night's sleep. Get some rest at least. So she goes back to her quarters. Right, this is the station. They're doing the repairs. Apparently it's not in very good nick, is this station. There's a lot of work to be done. I don't know what's happened. I think we're all thinking it's supposed to be... They're thinking it's the Gorn that's sabotaging it, because we learned that some sabotage has happened. But it's not from the Gorn. Una and Pellier encounter each other. And apparently Una doesn't like Pellier. We'll learn why later. She accuses Pellier of being sloppy and not a good chief engineer. So Uhura, she can't sleep. And then she has like a vision, a hallucination where she's in an outside area. And as she turns, she sees a plume of smoke. Is it going to show us? It's not going to show us, is it? No, not too far. See if we can go back. There we go. Sees a plume of smoke, and we later learn this is the site of the shuttle crash that killed her family. I think her parents and her brother, I think. So that's his hallucinating about that. We learn later on that obviously these aren't hallucinations. They do have meaning. Right, the transporter's going, and here is, there you go, it's Lieutenant James Tiberius Kirk from the Farragut. Now we're thinking, where's he beaming from? Apparently the Farragut's in the area. We don't know where. I don't think we even see it, but we will see. So he's beamed over from the Farragut. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe he's just got some time off and he's going to see his brother. Anyway, he's greeted by his brother, Sam, George Samuel Kirk. So they hug each other and then head straight for the bar. By the way, it does say this is quite a ship. So obviously the Farragut's not a Constitution class, even though we don't see it. So it must be some other class. Oh no, we did see it, didn't we? The Farragut in the finale of season 1. Yes, we did see it, and it's vaguely like Reliant Miranda class, isn't it? That sort of shape, but I don't think it is. I don't know if it is that class. It might be in the, if you look in Memory Alpha, it probably tells you. Anyway, so they're having a talk in the bar. I don't even know what it's called. The rec room, I suppose. Remember when on the original series when the rec room was just a little room where Spock used to play his Vulcan harp thing and Uhura'd sing, and it was tiny. In this one, it's bigger than 10 forward on the Enterprise D. But never mind. So they're having a little chat, and we learn that Sam, who goes by Sam and not George. George, remember, is the father. Their father. The mother's called Winona, which is a bit of a coincidence, isn't it? That Winona Ryder played Spock's mum in the J.J. Abrams films, but never mind. But the name Sam. Sam's obviously must be the elder brother, and so he's got George's name. I've never liked, I've never really understood the ego that must be in some dads' heads, some men's heads, where they name their son after them. I know sometimes it's a tradition, so you think, fair enough, maybe it's the third or fourth, and you think, it's become a tradition, but, straight up, bit of a big head, isn't it? Anyway, but doesn't use George, he uses Sam for whatever reason. And in this one, we learn that George Kirk was first officer on the Kelvin. So that's straight from the J.J. Abrams films, isn't it? I did look it up. I thought, right, I'm going to look this up about George Kirk. But there's not a lot of information about his early life. Apparently he was a Starfleet officer, but we don't know where. We learned he took his family and they lived on Tarsus 4. This is from the original series where Kirk witnessed the massacres of is it Kodos the Executioner. But that was obviously after the Kelvin. So obviously that's a retcon, I suppose, to bring it in line with the J.J. Abrams universe, the Kelvin timeline. But remember, that was obviously before Nero came along and changed that timeline. It was supposedly the prime timeline, but we know now it wasn't. It's all been changed. It's all over the place as the Star Trek timeline. So this we learned he was the first officer of the Kelvin, but obviously didn't die in this timeline. So there we go. Didn't die fighting Nero. So we learned that Sam's a bit. He seems jealous of James T. Kirk because he's risen up through the ranks quite quickly, and we learn he's been made the first officer of the Farragut as a lieutenant. He's the first officer, and he says, well, technically not for a few months, and he's training up the fellow that's going to replace him as whatever he did. So there we go. So he's the first officer of the Farragut. I don't know if the incident. Oh, I forgot what the name of the planet now. There's an incident with an alien life form that kills most of the crew of the Farragut, and James T. Kirk survives, and it becomes paranoid that hesitated using his phaser, and that's why a lot of people died. I don't know if that's happened before this or after this. I don't know. I think it might be yet to happen. But I think in Memory Alpha it mentions that the executive officer of the Farragut says it wasn't his fault. So it was the executive officer. I don't know. No, the executive officer doesn't outrank the first officer, does it? Sometimes they're interchangeable, aren't they? But anyway, I'm waffling. I'm trying to make it all fit, but it won't, will it? So there we go. So we learn that there is some friction between Sam and Jim. But obviously, they love each other, but there is a little bit of friction, and Sam walks off in a huff. I think this was maybe where we learn about the sabotage that's going on. Pellier comes back. She's dirty. She's been crawling through some tubes by the looks of it. And Una says, you've disobeyed my orders. I told you to do this, that, and the other. She says, well, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have learned that the station's been sabotaged. Right. Then we cut back to the lovely Jess Bush as Nurse Chapel. Sorry, I'm going weak at the knees. She's playing three-dimensional chess with Spock. There they are. And they seem very much in love, to be honest. They're talking about their relationship, and they're thinking, should they tell other people? I'm sure there's rumours going around the ship already, but they decide not to, not to say anything about it, just to continue as they are, essentially having a secret relationship. I bet everybody knows. It's not that big of a ship, is it? Uhura comes up and I forgot what she's asking now. She's asking Spock something. I can't remember what. What's she asking? I can't remember, but it's important to her. And Chapel says that she's supposed to be resting, and she's suffering from lack of sleep and deuterium poisoning, so she should go and relax. So she goes and gets a Saurian brandy. She sits down next to James T. Kirk. She thinks he's hitting on her. By the way, in this episode, the one thing I don't like about this episode, as I said, I enjoyed it. One thing I didn't like about it is the relationships between the different crew mates and the difference in ranks. She's very offhand with Kirk, who obviously outranks her. I don't think she even calls him Sir once. So that's a problem with this, with the new Trek or Kurtzman Trek or whatever you want to call it. They don't adhere very well to discipline within the ranks. But anyway, so she fobs him off. She takes a little sip of her brandy, walks off, fobs him off. And when she goes outside of 10 forward, she has another hallucination, and she sees all dead bodies. There we go. In the corridor, and then she ends up fighting herself, as we'll see. There we go. She's fighting herself. Then she throws a punch. She thinks she knocks herself out. It turns out she's punched James T. Kirk on the nose. Look at his bony ass. Look at that. William Shatner would snap him like a twig, wouldn't he? Anyway, so she's knocked him down, and she says, I'll take you to sick bay. He says, no, you don't want to add, assaulting a senior officer to your resume. So she says, I've got a dermal regenerator in my quarters. Why would she have that? I don't know, but she does. So she goes and heals him herself. There we go. And he decides to help her. They become friends in this episode. So this is probably why she remains on board when he becomes captain down the line. Still wish she'd grow her hair a bit. So he decides to help her. And he says, it's pointing at the pad there, says, could you give me your medical details, and I'll get the ship's doctor on the Farragut to have a look at them. Is that McCoy? I don't know. It doesn't say. It just says the Farragut's chief medical officer. It doesn't say by name. So off he goes to help. Right, they find the who did the sabotage, and it turns out it's a crewman called Ramos. Is he from the station, or is he from the Enterprise. I'm not entirely sure. I wasn't paying that much attention, to be completely honest. I presume it's from the Enterprise. But he seems, obviously he's upset and he's saying it's not real. So he's been having this similar hallucinations to Uhura. And he's not with it at all. So they're being back to the Enterprise. Then a red alert situation happens, so she heads to the bridge. And learn that they're under attack. I don't know if they say by whom. Maybe it's the Gorn, I don't know. But the bridge window... See, if they didn't have that bloody thing, this wouldn't have happened. The bridge window gets broken, and all the crew get pulled out through the... I'm going to see it. Oh, that's something else. Get blown out through the bridge window. Oh, and then the hallucination ends. We see Spock and all them get blown out. They don't get sucked out into space, they get blown out into space. Then the hallucination ends. And Pike says, "You alright, Ensign? Aren't you supposed to be in your quarters, under medical leave?" So she says, "Yes." So obviously he takes her to one side. There we see the NX-01 Enterprise there. And she's explaining what's happening now. She's having these hallucinations. She doesn't understand. She doesn't think it's to do with deuterium poisoning. But she doesn't know what to do. So obviously he offers to do what he can. And then Kirk arrives and meets Pike. I think for the first time in this timeline. Because remember, they met in an alternate future, didn't they? I think this is the first time they've met here. Fleet Captain Pike and Lieutenant James T. Kirk. There's a lot of first meetings in this episode. So they're both going to help Uhura figure out what's going on. They go and talk to the doctor. Oh no, they don't. This is the doctor examining Ramos. I think it's Ramos or Ramon. I can't remember. But he goes crazy and attacks the doctor. There he goes, slashes him with a whatever. The doctor says he's fine. He goes running off. So the security goes chasing after him. The security that obviously went to the Stormtrooper school of phasers. And they were angry because they shot a phaser at him, and it was a phaser bolt that came out, not a beam. Get your bloody beams back, New Trek. Anyway, so they have to go after this crazy crewman. They go to find his. I think he's killed. I don't think she's dead yet. There's another crew person here, and they get a medical crew down to her, but she passes away. This is Kirk and Uhura looking for. Is it Ramon or Ramos? I'll say Ramon, like Razor Ramon. So they're looking for him. I think she has another hallucination there. They come across La'an, who's with Pike. Obviously, La'an knows Kirk intimately, well, quite intimately, because of her time travel experience. But obviously, he doesn't know her, apart from when they spoke, through the communications array. And he reminds her that she still owes him a drink. Right, Uhura, she's following a blood trail. So she finds that it leads up to the warp nacelle, the nacelle access pylon conduit thing. So she says he's gone up there. So instead of waiting for backup, she heads up herself. She finds Ramon faffing about with something in the nacelle, hoping to blow it up. She tells him to stop, but he won't stop. And then a fight ensues. Then Kirk appears as emergency beam out, grabs hold of Uhura, they beam out, an explosion happens. There we go. And Ramon, whatever his name is, gets blown out into space, and we see him twirling into oblivion. So he's dead. Right, so they're realising something's. She's not hallucinating. Something really is going on because of what's happened with Ramon or Ramos, whatever the hell they call it. Does it say what guests? No, it doesn't say there. Anyway. So they've still got to get to the bottom of what's going on. This is Laan and Kirk having a slightly awkward moment. This is where he says, you still owe me a drink. Apologies if you can hear that. Voices. I think they're having a sports day at the school nearby. There's somebody over an intercom saying, ready, steady, go. Anyway, back on the station, Pelia and Una are still trying to figure out how to fix the station to get it collecting deuterium again. And this is where we learn that they don't she doesn't like Pelia. Obviously, Pelia's not bothered that Una doesn't like her. But we learn it will because she's basically calling her sloppy and stuff like that. And saying she's got crumbs on the uniform. I said, when have you been eating? But we later learn it's because Una was in one of Pelia's classes at the academy and she gave her a C. So she's never got over that. This is what we learn that later. Right. This is Kirk checking something. I think it's checking the logs from because they're being given access to Ramon's personal files because he's passed away. They're being given permission to go through his personal logs, and this is where we learn he's been seeing things and he doesn't understand what's going on, what's happening to him. Nobody believes him. So I don't know. I'm guessing. So was he on the station then already? Is he part of the station's crew? I don't know. I'm confused a bit by that. But anyway, so they know now that she's not, she's frightened. What's going to happen? What happened to Ramon is going to happen to her, and she'll put the Enterprise at risk. So she says she should be confined to quarters. So Kirk goes off to sort something out. And she's crying. Oh, she's remembering as well about the vision that she had of her parents dying. So she's crying there, and then we see her in a few minutes, and no sign of any tears or anything. But never mind. Because she has a brainwave, but she's crying. And then she starts watching the video again with Hemmer, and then she has a realisation, because I think Hemmer mentions something, and I forgot what he says, but it sparks a light bulb in her. And she realises somebody's communicating with her. There we go. No more tears, look. Wiped away instantly. So she realises somebody's trying to communicate with her, and she points out on the thingy of the brain that parts of Ramon's brain had basically been destroyed by this signal that he'd been listening to, or been hearing, and the same parts of her brain are also being targeted, but not as damaged as Ramon's was, or Ramos, I can't remember. But they've got to get to the bottom of it before she starts losing all the marbles. So she thinks a life form somewhere in the deuterium is communicating with her, or trying to communicate with her. To go to see Sam Kirk, who's an expert in stuff, and he comes up with that sort of idea that maybe it's a trans-dimensional entity that can kind of poke through into our reality, and have a look around, and he thinks this might be what's going on with these entities that are living in the deuterium cloud, living in the nebula. So there we go. Then she has another hallucination of everybody dead. So they've got to head to the bridge. Oh yes, the station comes online, and they realise that there's something in the nebula that that is warning Uhura about the doing something with the nebula, and the station's come back online now, and it's drawing in the deuterium, and they learn that what's happening is they are killing these aliens that live in the nebula. They're killing those aliens, that's why she was seeing what she was seeing. It's all to do with death. So they are killing the aliens, and obviously they've got to stop. So they warn the bridge, said you've got to, don't bring the station back online, but it's too late, it's online. And she gets another vision of the crashed shuttle. So that's showing that her family died. People that were close to her, so people that their family of the aliens is also dying. It's something that they should be concerned with. They're not just animals. So Uhura decides they've got to destroy the station because they can't shut it down. Something's gone wrong on the station, and Una and Pelia can't shut it down for whatever reason. I don't really know, but Uhura says she's certain. Oh, that was a quick change in expression there, wasn't it? Uhura says they've got to destroy the station, fire some photon torpedoes at it, destroy the station. Pike says, "Are you sure about this?" She says, "Yes, I am." And so he says, "Do it." So obviously he trusts his crew. So there we see the order and evacuation, emergency evacuation of the station. So all the shuttles and what else? Life pods are all ejecting from the station, and they let Uhura give the order for some reason. I don't know why. She says fire, and La'an presses the button. They open fire, and they really go to town. I'm not sure. I don't know how many they fire, but there you go, fire. There's a little nod, and there you go. Presses the button. Pew pew pew. Let me look at all them bloody photons. How many are they firing? Christ! They fire lots of photon torpedoes at the station. So we never see the Farragut. I presume it's around there somewhere. Anyway, that destroys the station. There it goes. Boom. So somebody's going to have to answer for that. Then she has another vision, and she sees Hemmer, as good as new, smiling at her, and then he disappears. He smiles and then fades. So the aliens being grateful for what they've done. Like I say, it's kind of been seen before, hasn't it, in Star Trek? We've seen this sort of thing before. There's Ortega. So anyway, Pike says, "Don't worry, Ensign, I'll take responsibility for all this," destroying the station that he was supposed to be bringing back online. And he says, "We'll just have to go find another nebula. I hope there ain't deuterium-based life forms living there as well." But so they're obviously not allowed to mine this nebula now. Will they tell the Gorn? I don't think the Gorn will give two monkeys, will they, if they go and start getting deuterium from that nebula. Anyway, so everything's all back to normal. So he tells her to go back to her station. So there we go. There we see the blazing debris of the station in the background. This is where we learn about Pelia giving Una a C for her exams or whatever. But eventually come to terms with each other. Then we're on 10 forward. The band's playing, and Uhura and Kirk are talking about what's gone on, and obviously they've become friends now. Sam pops up, and he apologises. He says he's proud of Jim for what he's done, and then he looks as he's expecting some sort of response, and Jim doesn't know what to say, and he says, "You're supposed to apologise to me." I said, "What for? I haven't done anything wrong." So Sam goes off in a huff. But anyway, and then Spock appears. There he goes off in a huff. Look. And then Spock appears. This is the first meeting of Spock and Kirk. See, they're shaking hands, and so they sit down, They have their first little get together. Then the camera's pulling back, which is a nice thing. Pulls back, seeing Spock getting to Spock, Uhura, and Kirk. You know, 3 of the classic TOS crew getting to know each other. And then that's the end of the episode. Then we cut to there we go, the credits. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, a good episode. Lost in translation. Obviously refers to her trying to understand what the Nebula aliens are trying to show her, because obviously they can't speak to her because they're a totally different form of life. So they're showing the visions, and obviously the visions were about, you know, they were being killed in the nebula by the deuterium being collected. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a good, in my opinion, it was a good Star Trek-y type episode. It was well worth the watch. I'm sure some people will complain about it and say, you know, it's changing canon and all that, but it's a new timeline anyway, in my opinion. So, in my opinion, they can do what they want. But the episode, I enjoyed it. I thought it was decent. We found a new form of life that they saved at the end by destroying a very expensive space station. Not that money means anything in the 23rd century, but never mind. But yeah, it's a good one. I'll give that episode an 8 out of 10. I don't think I've given any a 9 this season yet, but there's time, I suppose. But yeah, I'll give that one an 8 out of 10, which is a good score in my opinion. Next week's episode, I think it is. Next week's episode is the crossover with Lower Decks, called Those Old Scientists, directed by Jonathan Frakes. I'm dreading that one, but maybe it'll surprise me and be good. I'm not a fan of Lower Decks. In fact, I hate it. But never mind. So there we go. So that was Lost in Translation. Nothing to do with Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson or Sophia Coppola. But it was a good Star Trek-y type episode. Not original. We've seen that sort of thing before. You know, weird aliens communicating with visions and, you know, stuff like that. We've seen that sort of thing before. But, you know, it's Star Trek, innit? So that's what you want. So, right. So we'll leave it there. So, thanks for watching. Wherever you are, look after each other. And until next time, I'll see thee.